You said you wanted a pet, sister. Something small, obedient, and cute. But I found something far more exotic. The crystalline skies of Velmora shimmered in hues of violet and gold as the twin suns dipped behind the sky bridges. Amaranth Valtora, youngest of the Vayari Empress blood, perched at the edge of her floating garden balcony, staring at the stars. Her silver-scaled tail flicked lazily, a sign of boredom, dangerous in one of her lineage. Life as a Vayari noble was perfect. Too perfect. Everything was automated, from the glowing fruit that floated into her hands to the sentient pillows that adjusted to her moods. The universe danced for her amusement, but she felt empty. That was when her brother Lyrics came home from his expedition beyond the barrier worlds. He stood before her now, his long coat dusted with stardust, his golden horns curled elegantly atop his head. He grinned in that mischievous way that had landed him in trouble with the matriarchal tribunal more times than either of them could count. Lyrics, Amaranth drawled, not looking up. If this is another one of your bio-spliced gloop cats, I'll have it vaporized. Oh no, sister, he said, stepping aside. This is unlike anything you've ever seen. Behind him, a containment sphere hovered silently. The translucent walls shimmered with protective runes. Inside it stood a creature, a biped. Rough-skinned, simple clothing and no visible energy aura. But his eyes burned with a raw, untamed defiance. He wasn't trembling like most lower species when faced with a Vayari. He looked right at her, and he smirked. Amaranth stood. Slowly. Is it sentient? She asked, curiosity briefly piercing her boredom. Fully, Lyrics said proudly. It's called a human. Comes from a rogue planet beyond the known clusters. Primitive tech, almost no psionics, but they're stubborn, brilliant in their own chaotic way. I had to bargain with a Carthan slaver just to get one alive. The human watched them, unblinking. What's its name? Amaranth asked. The sphere shimmered as the containment AI translated the human's voice. I have a name, you know. It's Rowan, and I'm not a pet. There was a long silence. Then Amaranth laughed, a clear, crystalline sound like chimes on a storm breeze, her tail coiled with intrigue. Finally, something unexpected. Lyrics, she said slowly, her eyes. Never leaving, Rowan. You may have actually brought me a worthwhile gift. The Vayari Palace was built from moonstone and gravglass, its architecture defying physics and decorated by flora that sang in ultraviolet harmonies. Within its heart, Amaranth paced her meditation chamber, her thoughts tangled, a rare and dangerous condition for one of her bloodline. The human, Rowan, had been moved from the containment sphere to a stasis-free holding room outfitted with minimal comforts and maximum surveillance. She hadn't spoken to him again since their initial encounter, but she'd spent hours reviewing the playback, the way he looked at her. Not with awe or fear, but something bordering on challenge. He was primitive, yes, but not broken. That intrigued her. Why are you so interested in this one? Lyrics asked, as he entered unannounced, a fresh scar glimmering across his cheek. You used to dissect strange creatures for fun when we were hatchlings. This one speaks, thinks, refuses to kneel. He calls himself Rowan. There's meaning in that. Lyrics poured himself a glass of liquid starlight and flopped onto a hovering couch. He's stubborn, yes. They all are. But humans burn fast. Too much passion, not enough evolution. Like stars that go supernova before they're ready. Amaranth stopped pacing. Then perhaps he's the chaos I need. Down below, in a room that barely passed for civilized, Rowan studied the glowing panels on the walls. The technology here was incomprehensible. Liquid surfaces, humming energy conduits, hovering objects that watched him. He didn't like being watched. He'd been abducted. No way around that. One moment he was hiking in the Andes, documenting pre-Incan ruins, and the next he was on a floating prison cube light years from Earth. He had no idea if time moved the same here. How long had he been gone? Rowan sat on the edge of the levitating slab that passed for a bed and rubbed his temples. He wasn't trained for this. He wasn't a soldier or a hero, just an anthropologist with a sharp tongue and a bad habit of punching people who underestimated him. And then she walked in. Amaranth's presence made the air shimmer. She wore a flowing gown woven with living silk that whispered in foreign tongues. Her silver-blue skin reflected the starlight, and her slit-pupilled eyes glowed faintly like twin moons. Rowan stood automatically, not out of fear. Reflex, maybe. Respect, perhaps. She had a presence that pulled at something deep in his gut. "You're standing," she said with mild surprise. "You entered the room. Seemed polite." "You're not afraid of me?" Rowan shrugged. "Should I be?" Amaranth circled him slowly, examining his form, not just physically, but with a subtle scan of energy currents. Still no psionic resonance, still a complete biological anomaly. "You know we consider beings like you novelties, lesser. Cool. Back home, some people think pineapple on pizza is a crime. We all have our standards." Amaranth blinked, parsing the cultural nuance from the translation AI. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. "You're either brave or stupid. Little bit of both, but mostly curious." Their eyes met again, and for the first time in her life, Amaranth felt like she wasn't the one holding the leash. Later that cycle, Amaranth reviewed the genetic scans of the human. His species shouldn't be capable of resisting Veyari presence like this. No mental shielding, no cosmic adaptation, and yet his mind hadn't frayed, hadn't even strained. "His species has something," she whispered to herself. "Not power, not technology, something else. Emotion, grit, that intangible quality the Veyari had lost over millennia of perfection. The matriarch wouldn't approve of this curiosity. Lyrax had already warned her. The tribunal thinks humans are unpredictable, volatile, dangerous. Good. She wanted danger. She summoned the AI interface. "Bring him to the Star Garden tomorrow at Third Rise. I want to observe." Back in his room. Rowan stared at the unfamiliar constellations out the window. He didn't know what Amaranth wanted with him. But he saw something in her eyes too. Loneliness. Maybe he could use that. Or maybe he already felt it too. The Veyari Star Garden was unlike anything Rowan had seen, even in his dreams. It floated above the clouds, suspended by grav anchors so advanced he could barely feel a tremble under his feet. Bioluminescent flora swayed in a non-existent breeze, singing soft notes into the open air. The ground beneath him wasn't ground at all. It was translucent crystal, glowing with galaxies trapped inside. Rowan was barefoot, dressed in something soft and strange. Organic fabric that clung lightly to his form. Nothing here was familiar, but nothing was overtly hostile either. He glanced at the guards standing silently by the crystal arches, armed but relaxed. Their spears hummed with latent energy. And then she arrived. Amaranth floated down in a gentle arc, her gown trailing behind like an aurora. She landed with the elegance of a snowflake and dismissed the guards with a flick of her hand. "You're early," she said. Rowan smiled. "Back home, we have this weird thing called being punctual." She walked past him and he followed, drawn to her like a gravity well. Around them, strange flowers turned their petals toward him, as if sensing something new, something rare. "I've brought diplomats from 12 star systems here," Amaranth said as they walked. None of them noticed the scent changes in the sky bloom leaves. "I did," Rowan replied. "Smells like citrus and burning sugar." She stopped, studying him. "You continue to surprise me, human." Rowan. she repeated slowly. Your name feels short. We see. Like things simple. You ever been to Earth? No. And by our laws, I shouldn't even be speaking to you like this. Then why are you? She looked away, her long fingers trailing across a spiraled flower that shimmered blue at her touch. Because I'm tired, she admitted. Of control, of perfection, of every conversation being a performance. And you think I'm different? Rowan asked. You are different. You speak freely. You challenge me. You're not afraid to be flawed, Rowan chuckled. Flawed is my middle name. They sat together on a hovering stone platform that began to drift gently across the garden, powered by unseen energy. Tell me about your world, Amaranth said. Not the politics, not the wars. Tell me something. Real. He paused. My sister and I used to sit on the roof during summer storms, he began. We'd watch the clouds roll in, hear the thunder rumble across the valley. She'd always pretend she wasn't scared, but I could feel her hand trembling when she held mine. Amaranth's expression softened. You miss her? Every damn day. Silence fell. Not awkward, just present. May I ask you something? Rowan said. Amaranth nodded. Why did you bring me here? The real reason. She hesitated, then quietly. Because I've never felt small before, and when you looked at me, I did. Not in a weak way, in a real way. Rowan met her gaze, and in that moment something ancient and human sparked between them. Not lust, not love, but possibility. As the platform floated past a grove of whispering vines, Amaranth held up her hand. The platform halted. Rowan, she said, I want to show you something, but you must not speak of it to anyone. He nodded. You have. My word. She reached into a hidden fold in her gown and pulled out a crystal sphere, dark and glowing from within, alive. This is a memory seed, she said. It holds moments, feelings, truths not meant for public eyes. She placed it against her temple, and it pulsed. Then she touched it to his forehead. Rowan gasped. Suddenly he saw, not with eyes, but with soul. Amaranth as a child, curled in her mother's arms, weeping quietly as her mind was force-fed planetary diplomacy and psychometric languages. Amaranth in her teens, screaming in silence as tutors shaped her like clay. Her desires crushed beneath legacy. Amaranth alone in her chambers, watching stars. For hours, pretending they were people who might someday understand her. And then, the memory of him. His smirk, his defiance, his honesty. The seed pulled away. Rowan staggered back, breathless. You trust me, he whispered. I need to, she said. They stood there, two species light years apart, yet closer in that instant than many could ever be in a lifetime. And just as Rowan reached forward, not to touch her, but to reassure her, a sharp tone blared from the distant towers. Amaranth's face darkened. The matriarch calls. Someone's seen us. Is that bad? Very. Before he could speak again, she vanished in a blink of violet light, leaving only the scent of stardust in her wake. Back in his chamber that night, Rowan couldn't sleep. He wasn't sure what was happening, but he knew something had changed. She wasn't his captor anymore, and maybe, just maybe, he wasn't her prisoner either. They fear what they cannot control, and I fear what I cannot protect. Amaranth Valtora. The summons came at third light, not a request, a command. Amaranth knelt before the high matriarchs in the Temple of Echoes, a vast chamber carved from voidstone, where light and sound moved unnaturally. The walls whispered secrets back to those who dared speak. The three matriarchs, cloaked in veils of energy, towered above her on their thrones of suspended crystal. Their presence pressed down like gravity made flesh. You have bonded with the off-world creature, the central matriarch said, her voice ancient, genderless and cold. That is not accurate, Amaranth replied, keeping her tone even. You accessed a memory seed in his presence, the left matriarch added. You shared your truth, said the right, with an unstable, pre-ascended male, a human. I am free to choose my companions. You are Vayari Empress blood, the central one cut in. Your choices shape the realm. Your affections are not yours to give. Amaranth clenched her jaw. I did not give affection. Then why do you dream of him? The right matriarch asked. The question struck deeper than any accusation. Amaranth said, Nothing. You are forbidden from seeing the human again, the central voice declared. He is to be relocated to Cryo Chamber 7 until repatriation or disposal is approved. Amaranth's heart turned to ice. You want to erase him. He is a threat to stability, an anomaly, a seed of chaos. And yet I find myself thinking, Amaranth whispered, rising to her feet, perhaps chaos is exactly what we need. The matriarchs flared with energy. Alarms echoed through the chamber. But Amaranth was already gone. Rowan was mid-sentence, arguing with his AI-locked door for more food options. When the lights flickered red, the floor beneath him trembled. He backed away instinctively, just in time for the entire wall to shimmer and open like liquid. Guards, 4 of them. This a fire drill? Rowan asked. They didn't answer. 2 aimed their spears. 1 stepped forward with a containment collar. Right. Not a drill. Rowan raised his hands. I don't suppose we can talk about this. They didn't reply, but they also didn't get the chance. Because the room exploded, energy crackled as the wall behind the guards blew inward. Wind howled. From the smoke stepped Amaranth, her gown replaced by an armored tunic of shimmering obsidian scales. Her eyes glowed with fury. Get away from him. The guards hesitated, only for a heartbeat. Then they charged. Rowan didn't know what he expected from her. Elegant dueling, magic spells. What he got was a whirlwind of brutal, efficient precision. She moved like lightning and thunder had learned martial arts. One by one the guards were dropped with flicks of her wrist, crackling psionic bursts, and a well-placed tail whip that sent the last one flying. Rowan stared. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Amaranth grabbed his arm. We don't have much time. Wait. What's happening? Where are we going? To freedom. The escape wasn't easy. Security drones swarmed them in the inner corridors. Rowan ducked behind her as energy blasts lit the air around them. Amaranth guided him through hidden passages, maintenance, ducts and emergency lifts known only to nobility. Finally, they reached the edge of the palace's outer shell. Beyond it, stars stretched into infinity. Amaranth, this is insane, Rowan gasped. You'll lose everything. She turned to him, eyes burning. Then maybe it was never mine to begin with. There was silence. Then Rowan stepped forward. Why me? He asked. Why not one of your own kind? Her voice was quiet. Because you see me, not the title, not the legacy. Just me. He swallowed, heart thudding. Yeah, well, I see you too. She leaned in, forehead gently touching his. Then hold on tight, human. The floor beneath them dropped as she activated a gravity slide. They fell into the launch chute of a stolen transport pod, just big enough for 2. Alarms screamed, the docking bay sealed, and the stars rushed forward as they blasted into space. Far behind them, the matriarchs watched from the orbital mirrors. She's chosen her own path, the central one murmured, and now we watch what happens when chaos touches destiny. Inside the pod, Rowan stared out at the stars. Beside him, Amaranth sighed and slumped into the seat, tension leaving her for the first time. So, this is what rebellion feels like, he said. She glanced over, smirking. How does it feel? Terrifying, exhilarating, confusing. Good, she replied. That's how you know it's real. Their hands brushed, then lingered, Not accident, not coincidence. Something new. To see one's home through another's eyes is to fall in love all over again. Ancient Earth proverb. The stolen pod coasted in silence, its engines cold, running on drift momentum and cloaking. For days, neither of them had spoken much, not because there was nothing to say, but because every word now mattered. Rowan sat in the co-pilot seat, flipping through navigation charts. We're running low on food rations and we can't contact anyone without pinging a Starlink. You sure you want to do this? Amaranth was watching the stars, her expression unreadable. Yes, he sighed. Then where to? She turned to him, a strange glint in her eye. Take me to your world. It had been nearly 5 years since Rowan last saw Earth from space, when the blue and green sphere bloomed into view, suspended. In endless black, he exhaled like a man who had been holding his breath for years. There it is, he whispered. Amaranth stood slowly beside him, her fingers lightly touching the glass viewport. It's alive. Yeah, that's what we do. We live, we fight, we ruin things, and then we fix them again. Kind of our whole thing. She looked at him, her violet eyes wide. You feel more when you're near it. The emotion, the chaos. It's almost painful. Rowan smiled. Welcome to the human condition. They landed in the ruins of an old Earth station in Alaska, long abandoned and shielded by thick snow and signal distortion. The cold bit at them, but Rowan scavenged clothes from a buried supply container and gave her one of his old jackets, comically oversized on her lean frame. It smells like metal and lemon, she said, sniffing it with a wrinkle of her nose. Yeah, sorry. That's called cologne. Human mating tradition. Mating? He blinked. Forget I said that. Amaranth tilted her head. Your skin temperature just spiked. Yours too. They stared at each other. The moment stretched. Then they both looked away, laughing nervously. Over the next 2 days, Rowan showed her Earth in fragments, a frozen lake under auroras, old human music from a battery-powered speaker, a sunrise that turned the sky into fire and melted the ice, just enough to reflect their silhouettes. Amaranth sat by the fire, toasting marshmallows awkwardly. This is sticky and sweet and confusing. That's how you know it's a good human experience. She stared at the flames. Do you think your people would hate me? Rowan leaned back on his elbows. Some, yeah, but some would love you. Some would worship you. Some would want to write poetry about your ears. She looked at him sideways. You would write poetry about my ears? I might. She was quiet for a moment, then softly. Would you kiss them too? That silenced him, but his eyes didn't look away. Yeah, he said. I would. She inched closer. Then why? Haven't you? Rowan's heart pounded. Because I didn't want to make the first move. Her smile was slow and sure. Then I will. And she kissed him. It wasn't like in movies. It wasn't perfect. There was cold air and wind and awkward angles. But it was real. When they pulled apart, she leaned her forehead against his. So, this is what humans call romance? Not exactly, Rowan said breathlessly. But it's a hell of a start. Later that night, wrapped in shared blankets inside the pod's bunk, Amaranth whispered, I was never supposed to feel this. Rowan turned to her. But you do. I think I do. Me too. They lay in silence, fingers intertwined, their breath fogging the window as they watched the stars wheel overhead. But peace is never permanent, not when you've stolen something precious. Somewhere above the earth, a signal pulsed through the void, picked up by a dormant Veyari tracking. Satellite, the message was short, Subject located. Retrieval imminent. Back inside the pod, Rowan slept soundly. Amaranth stayed awake, staring at the stars. She didn't want to run anymore. She didn't want to hide. She wanted choice, and she wanted him, and she was ready to fight for both. The universe doesn't give you what you want. It gives you the moment to choose who you are. Rowan Lark. The crack of thunder wasn't natural. It was the sound of a tear in the sky. Rowan bolted upright in the bunk, heart pounding. Amaranth was already at the controls, eyes glowing with violet light, her hand hovering over the pulse shield. Outside the pod, the air shimmered, and a portal bloomed open above the frozen forest. A Ve'ari war cruiser, sleek, black, silent as a god's judgment. "They found us," she said quietly. "How?" "I told you. They always watch." Figures descended in a beam of soft white energy. Matriarchs, cloaked and hovering, their presence warping gravity. But this time, they weren't alone. Another Ve'ari stood between them, taller than the rest, with a mantle of crystal feathers and a face that mirrored Amaranth's, older, colder, Serenia Valtora, her sister, the one who had once said, "I want a pet." Something. Exotic. Amaranth stepped forward. "You shouldn't have come." Serenia's smile was like a knife dipped in perfume. "You left me no choice, sister. I chose my path. I chose him." Serenia's gaze flicked to Rowan. A flawed creature. Weak, short-lived. Why? Because he sees me, not the throne, not the bloodline, just Amaranth. The matriarchs floated silently behind Serenia, observing. Serenia sighed. "And what would you have us do? Let the blood of Valtora mingle with earth dirt? You don't get to decide what love looks like. That's not love. It's rebellion, infatuation, heat." Rowan stepped forward. "It's more than heat." Serenia turned sharply. "Silence, animal." Rowan didn't back down. "You don't get to call me that. I may not be royal, or psychic, or immortal, but I feel, I love, I bleed. And if that scares you, good." Serenia moved like a storm. In a blink, she stood before him, a spear of plasma aimed at his heart. "Would you die for her?" she hissed. Rowan's voice was steady. "Yes." The world held its breath. Amaranth moved. Not fast. Not with violence, but with intention. She stepped between them, placing her hand on the blade and letting it burn into her skin. "You want war?" she said, voice like thunder. "Then strike. But know this, if you kill him, you kill the only part of me that still believes in us. The only part worth saving." Serenia hesitated. Something in her perfect posture cracked. Not visibly. Not loud. But something shifted. The matriarchs whispered among themselves, their voices echoing in all directions. "She has chosen. She has grown. She has earned the right of becoming." Serenia's weapon vanished. "You would leave us," she whispered, "for a human?" "No," Amaranth replied. "I will always be Ve'ari, but I refuse to be your prisoner. I am not your pet. I am not your prize. I am mine." She turned to Rowan and took his hand. "And he is mine too." The sky shimmered again, and the Ve'ari ship slowly folded itself back into the stars. No war, no blast, just silence and a choice honored. Days later, in the warmth of Earth's first spring thaw, Amaranth and Rowan stood atop a cliff overlooking the sea. He held her hand, tracing the healing burn on her palm. "So, what now?" "We live," she said, "here or there, together. And your people? They'll watch. They'll whisper. Some will hate, others will change." He smiled. "You think we'll make it?" "I don't know," she said honestly, "but we'll make something. Something new. Then she touched her forehead to his, an ancient Veery gesture of soul-linking. "You are not my pet," she whispered. He grinned. "Good. That would have been weird." She laughed. He kissed her. The sea roared below. The stars danced above, and the future began. The end love stories don't always begin with perfection. Sometimes they begin with rebellion, with defiance, with one soul daring to say, "This is who I choose." If you felt something, if this journey touched you, share it. Tag a friend who needs to believe in impossible love. And remember, sometimes the most alien thing is a heart that dares to love freely.